Hello YouTube, we're back again with another Genshin Impact video, adding another character to our free-to-play character spotlight series. Today we are going to talk about Ayaka for her rerun banner in patch 2.6. In this video, we will be working on how to build Ayaka by focusing on her free-to-play options. Ayaka is one of the strongest main DPS units at Constellation 0, which makes her a great addition to the series, and she's also one of my favorite characters in the game. She can permanently freeze enemies and dish out tons of damage. Her team comp revolves around freeze teams, and even one of her freeze team is a team comp with only the free characters. To start this video, we're going to talk about Ayaka's skills and passives first. Her normal attack has a high base rate, and her charge attack is one of her main damage outputs, targeting close enemies and multiplying damage instances. While using her sprint, she infuses her weapon with cryo and applies cryo to enemies. With just these on her kit, she's one of the most consistent cryo applicators in the game as well. Her elemental skill is a circle AoE cryo damage that creates 45 energy particles. Her elemental burst is one of the most broken abilities in the game, doing 19 hits of cryo damage with 1 hit of bloom damage. On the downside, it does have a 20-second cooldown and require a ton of energy. So since your burst has a 5-second duration with a 20-second cooldown, you will have some downtime where you can spam your charge attacks. Also, since your elemental burst requires 80 energy, it's also good to pair her with a cryo support or enough energy recharge. Ayaka's first Ascension passive increases her normal and charge attack damage by 30% for 6 seconds after using her elemental skill. Her second Ascension passive restores 10 stamina and gains 18% cryo bonus damage for 10 seconds after using her sprint, which is another reason why she is one of the most consistent cryo applicators in the game. She can keep using her sprint and restore stamina on top of gaining cryo bonus damage as long as her sprint hits an enemy. So in general, if you want to dish out the maximum damage for your burst, you're going to want to apply your second passive first before activating your Q. Her talent level priority is her elemental burst, followed by her normal and charge attack, and her elemental skill last. Now let's talk about her artifacts. For your pre-AR45 artifacts, you can throw in the Martial Artist set, which is great to increase her normal and charge attack damage by 25%. Or you can use a 2-piece Berserker if you lack crit rate, and then add in any 2-piece set with 18% attack. I don't recommend spending resin at this point until AR45, by then each domain run will guarantee you a 5-star artifact. Once you're at AR45 and farming for your artifacts, that's when you can max out your Ayaka's potential. She benefits a lot in freeze teams, so her best in slot set would be the Blizzard Strayer set. You could even say that this set was tailor-made for Ayaka because of the 2-piece cryo bonus damage and the 4-piece set, giving her 20% crit for any enemies affected by cryo, and another 20% on top if the enemy is frozen. With Ayaka's kit, the 4-piece set effect is easy to fulfill and basically gives her 40% crit rate just by having this artifact set. With that being said, you can focus on having crit damage for your circlet, cryo damage or attack percent for your goblet, and attack percent for your sands. Pair her together with another cryo unit for resonance. She can cap her crit rate without even having a crit rate weapon or circlet, and you can focus on building her crit damage. But if you're one of those people using Ayaka as a burst support, you can also build her with a 2-piece Blizzard Strayer and a 2-piece Noblesse. But to gain more damage out of Ayaka, I do prefer using her as a main DPS with the 4-piece Blizzard. Now moving on to Ayaka's weapons. Weapons for Ayaka are easy. Any 5-star weapon is good for her. Her best in slot is the Mist Splitter Reforged, and even if you rolled from the last banner, the Haran Sword also works great for her. But since this is a free-to-play guide, we will be focusing on easier weapons to get. The Black Sword or Black Cliff Longsword are good 4-star weapons for Ayaka if you're able to get them. The Black Cliff Longsword preferred more than the Black Sword because Ayaka can easily cap her crit rate, so building her with the Black Cliff Longsword for its crit damage main stat is more beneficial. But her best free-to-play weapon is the Aminoma Kageuchi, which is the easiest to get since it is a craftable sword once you've unlocked Inazuma. Not only does it have an attack percent main stat, the sword's passive helps her with energy recharge since each seed you consume after using your burst gains you 6 to 7 energy particles. This is very helpful since her burst has a high energy cost, and the Aminoma's passive helps keep her burst uptime more consistent. To use the Aminoma sword to its potential, you're going to want to use her elemental skill as much as you can before activating her burst to gain extra energy particles. For your 3-star option, you can go with the Harbinger of Dawn until you can get either swords that were mentioned earlier. Moving on to Ayaka's best team compositions, before we start, I just want to clarify a few things. A lot of misconceptions about Ayaka is that some people think she is expensive to build because of her team comp requirements. Ideally, you want to build Ayaka around a freeze team, and a lot of people think that freeze teams require certain 5-star characters, which is not true. Ayaka is great even when built around free-to-play characters. To explain this further, we'll start with her most used team comp, which is Ayaka, Kazuha, Kokomi, and Shenhe, where you can even replace Kokomi with Mona, one of the most used teams in the current Spiral Abyss. This is a freeze team composing of 4 5-star characters, which is hard to do when you're free to play. Also, another one of her popular team comps is her Morgana variant, but rather than Ganyu, you have Ayaka, Mona, Venti, and Diona, which is another team comp that has 3 5-star units. But since we are focusing on free-to-play teams here, the first 2 teams isn't the only team comps Ayaka can be built around. The concept for freeze teams are true, but you don't necessarily have to have all these 5-star characters. As long as you have Ayaka as your main DPS, another cryo unit to battery your Ayaka, a hydro applicator, and an animo unit for elemental shred. Moving on to Ayaka's free-to-play team comps, one of her popular free-to-play team comp is Ayaka, Rosaria, Xingqiu, and Sucrose, with Sucrose having the Trailing Tails to buff Ayaka's damage before using her burst, Rosaria acting as your burst support and a slight battery, and Xingqiu to complete your freeze team rotation. Xingqiu can also provide some healing, but since your enemies will be frozen most of the time, the need for a healer isn't always necessary. Also, I just want to talk about another one of Ayaka's team comps that I really enjoy playing. This team comp consists of just 3 characters, which is Ayaka, Barbara, Kaya, and the Animo Traveler. This team comp is so free to play with the free characters and so functional that playing around Kaya's burst and Barbara's elemental skill, you will be running around freezing enemies like crazy. Along with having the Traveler as an Animo unit, to apply the elemental shred with the Viridescent Venerer set. With all of this, Ayaka can consistently freeze enemies and deal tons of damage. Now let's move on to Ayaka's Constellations. I still want to discuss Ayaka's Constellations even though we are focused on free to play, but like I said, Ayaka is one of the most broken units in the game even at Constellation 0. But the question still remains, is Ayaka's Constellation still worth it? Well, not necessarily, but she can benefit by having them. Her first constellation decreases her elemental skill cooldown by 0.3 seconds each time Ayaka deals cryo damage to an enemy by normal or charge attack. It's not really her best constellation, but it does benefit her in a way by casting more elemental skills to gain more energy for her burst. Her second constellation spawns more Frost Flakes for her burst that deals 20% of the original Storm's damage, which isn't the greatest boost in her burst, but 20% is a decent increase. Her Constellation 3 increases her burst by 3 levels, which is generally a good constellation for any unit that takes advantage of their elemental burst, especially for Ayaka to increase her burst damage output. Her Constellation 4 is also good since her burst will decrease enemies' defense by 30%. Her Constellation 5 increases her elemental skill by 3, which is meh, and her Constellation 6, the too long didn't read, is Ayaka gains a massive charge attack damage increase every 10 seconds. It will be great for Ayaka since combining your burst with charge attacks after, you will get more damage output at the end of your rotation. If you're going to wail on Ayaka, usually Constellation 3 or 4 is a good stop for her, but you can also go C6 and still gain more for her as well. Now, wrapping up all of this, Ayaka seems like she's complicated, but she is super easy to build. She's also super free to play friendly since you can build her with just Constellation 0 and use her as a main DPS. Her freeze teams are competitive in nature that they are often used in Spiral Abyss clears. She doesn't need a lot of investment since you don't really need to get any of her constellations, and her overall kit revolves around increasing her damage. On top of being one of the most broken units in the game, she's also one of the most pleasing to look at, and her skill and attack animation is one of the nicest in the game. Ayaka is worth it since she guarantees you a 5-star meta cryo main DPS unit. I hope this video helped you build your Ayaka, and if I missed anything, please comment them down below. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I will be giving away a free Welkin of the Moon in my upcoming videos. I hope all of you Ayaka wanters become Ayaka havers. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.